Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about the new Marvel connection. It's just really it's like a huge deal, right? That Marvel has connected by canon to Dungeons and Dragons, and it changes a lot of things, and it really connects to a specific subject that I am incredibly passionate about, which is Dungeons and Dragons canon. So Dungeons and Dragons canon is incredibly complex, and I want to talk about the new Marvel connection. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the Lego Dungeons and Dragons connection. So coming up on 2 years now. 2 years ago, it was announced that Lego would officially connect to Dungeons and Dragons. When that happened, I got so excited. I immediately began collecting Lego, and that was the exact right thing to do because Lego Dungeons and Dragons has exploded on the scene. And, literally tens of thousands of pieces of Lego are now canon Dungeons and Dragons. And we are now moving into the phase where the Lego minifig is really the default Dungeons and Dragons miniature, right? And that Lego is quickly becoming the default Dungeons and Dragons terrain. And this gets really interesting too because for a long time there's been a question of what is the official Dungeons and Dragons miniature, and the reality is WizKids was releasing these. Yeah, I think it was WizKids, right? Yeah, yes, the same people who make um, HeroClix, right? Was making official D&D miniatures, but those you could just throw them in a lake now because they're garbage compared to Lego, right? Like you can't put a sword in the hand of any 28 millimeter, miniature, right? Not without a great amount of cost and effort, right? Whereas that is infinitely doable with Lego. So Lego Dungeons and Dragons came in, and it really fundamentally changed Lego Dungeons and Dragons miniatures forever and Dungeons and Dragons terrain forever, right? And major and also like in-house talent, in-house Dungeons and Dragons talent, Ginny D, right? Like she was, flown out to play official Legos Dungeons and Dragons. And if you notice, she's been a lot more positive about Dungeons and Dragons recently, now that she is, kind of like really carrying the Dungeons and Dragons banner far more officially than she ever did before. I think she's still independent, but it's hard to tell. She's like very pro Dungeons and Dragons, which is really nice, right? So and there's a lot more talent like that, and I think that's one of the reasons why these like, and this is the issue. Lego just connected Pharrell to Dungeons and Dragons. Hasbro didn't need to make a call, right? And this is what I'm saying is like the megastar of the earth is now connected to Dungeons and Dragons. Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson that has Oscars. The Oscars are now connected to Dungeons and Dragons, right? You're Iron Man. Iron Man is a Marvel character. There's your official Lego Dungeons and Dragons character, minifigure. The Iron Man Lego minifigure, which used to be like independent, but is now, in my humble opinion, fully 100% a canon Dungeons and Dragons miniature. Better than anything WizKids ever made, right? Like, and it's astounding. The other thing is, this is pretty wild, but like, let's say, you really like 28 millimeter. Great. Look, okay, there are literally thousands of Marvel minifigures that have been made by WizKids, which are those now? Like, is the entire HeroClix line of Marvel officially Dungeons and Dragons miniatures? That seems like it's a really, in my humble opinion, yes, right? This goes even further. Like, HeroClix did an official 28 millimeter line of Lord of the Rings, right? Well, Scott, how's that connected to Magic the Gathering? Magic the Gathering is canon to Dungeons and Dragons, and Magic the Gathering printed an entire huge array of Lord of the Rings cards. Exactly the same cards that represent the HeroClix figures. Click, 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 right? Dungeons and Dragons canon is exploding with celebrity, with wealth, with power, the rings of power. It's incredible. And Dungeons and Dragons has officially tied itself to the most powerful intellectual properties in the world. And this new Marvel one is unbelievable. And it's shocking how much, the canon of the, and so this is the entire, thanks for your patience. Here's the entire point of this video. All right, so for another project, right? I was, I got up, Saturday morning, lazy Saturday morning. I got up, rolled out of bed, and I'm very fortunate. I have libraries all over my house, and one of the libraries at my house is graphic novels that are literally, a foot and a half away from my head when I sleep. But there's bookshelves that are close to where I sleep, right? So I get up, and there's Runaways, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, Runaways. And it's called Runaways Dead End Kids, right? So it's a graphic novel. It's a hardback graphic novel. It's just been in my collection for a long time. But I picked it up for, to do some research for another project. And I'm like, wait a second. And I started reading through, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting this, right? There's the alien, the Runaways. There's the alien. There's the boyfriend of Gertrude who died, and now he has her raptor, and Alex Wilder, is dead, and then we have the Pride, and Nico Manuru, and just Molly Hayes, right? And I'm a huge fan of Runaways, right? And so I'm reading through this, and they sit down with Fisk, with Kingpin, right? And I'm like, okay, they're sitting down with Fisk, Kingpin, and I'm just kind of putting through my head, and they're sitting down with Kingpin because they're taking over the Pride's territory, right, in New York City, right? And Fisk is like, okay, you're coming to me in the right manner, right? You're showing respect. I respected the Pride. They stayed out of my way. I stayed out of their way. But now, we're in the middle of it, and we need to get to a point where, so do I have the same agreement with you guys, right? And I was really like, oh my gosh, that's Fisk, that's Kingpin, right? And and then I'm like, Molly Hayes and Skrulls, and and I was just like, I was really just swept away in what I'm always swept away in, which is, and just really kind of enjoying my time with these Marvel characters. And I was like, oh my gosh, these aren't Marvel characters anymore. These are Dungeons and Dragons characters. Marvel comes to Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering is canon through 55 different threads, right? Through literally thousands of threads, right? 55 major cables, right? And thousands of threads, right? To, Magic the Gathering is canon to Dungeons & Dragons, which means all of Marvel is canon to Dungeons & Dragons, in my humble opinion. And I'm like, these are, so I need to realize, where does Molly Hayes fit in? Does she come in through Greyhawk? Does she come in through Darksun? Does she come in through Eberron? Does she come in through Exandria, right? Kingpin, what is his role in Dragonlance, right? And I realized, I looked on the shelf, every single comic that's ever been printed by Marvel, every single one, right, is canon to Dungeons & Dragons now. They're just D&D canon pages in a different form, right? And where does that, how far does that reach? Well, official Marvel Comics had Batman fighting Hulk. In my humble opinion, that means that every single DC character ever made had the ability to transport to and from Earth 616, which means that all of DC canon, all of DC's characters are also canon, right? Because the bridge through which they would go to Strixhaven, from which they would go to Ravnica, from which they would go to Theros, from which they would go to Dominaria, from which they would go to Caldenon, right? All of those, the bridge is built. The bridge is built. It's powerful. It's meaningful, right? This chain, it means that every single, in my humble opinion, the Magic the Gathering Marvel Bridge makes every Marvel character 100% canon, and every DC character 100% canon to D&D, and all Marvel comic books and all DC comic books no longer function as independent superhero fare. They are simply Dungeons & Dragons canon pages in a different format, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.